Picked up something really cool at school today. It's one of these super fans made by a company called Super Electric. These were really popular here in Canada back in the day. Lots and lots of them were sold here. I forget if they even were sold in the United States. I think they were. But yeah, there were tons of models of these sold up until I think it was around the early or mid 2000s was when these finally disappeared. But I really liked these. They were quite cheap fans, but they were good quality as far as cheap fans go. And yeah, I've had a few of them over the course of my life. My first one that I got to own myself was a just one of those normal 12 or 13 inch oscillating fans, and that one I accidentally burned up in the late 2000s. I got it as a birthday gift in 2000 actually, my 6th birthday in 2000, and I accidentally burned it up in the late 2000s. I had the blades off it to clean them, and I turned it on for some reason without the blades. Got up and left the room to do something, accidentally left it running, the motor overheated without the blades on it, the thermal protection tripped, and that was the end of it. I threw it away. So yeah, I was sad about that. I've also owned one of the larger units, ones that are like, I think like 16 or 17 inches. That originally belonged to my older sisters. That one eventually got junked because it was woefully out of balance. It just shook and shaked, and actually the shaft of the motor had developed so much play that the blades were starting to hit against the grill, so that thing got junked. And then you can actually watch on this channel, in fact you might remember, about 4 years ago, I picked up another 16, 17 inch super fan at school. And that one works just fine. I still have it, still working fine. And now, today, I've gotten this little guy. This is a 6-inch unit, one of the smallest ones they ever made, and I've always wanted one of these. I love these little, tiny fans. And I remember when these were on store shelves. I remember once, only once, back in, it was the late 90s, early 2000s, my dad and I were at a Walmart, I believe, and they had a display of these super fans set up. 4 or 5 of them all next to each other, one of each different size you could buy. They had one of these ones, and then beside it one slightly larger, and then beside that one of the 12, 13 inch ones, and then one of the 16, 17 inch ones beside that. And yeah, it was really cool. So yeah, I'm quite happy to have found this. It's a neat little fan. 120 volt, of course. The head does tilt up and down. 2-speed, high and low with the switch right there. Doesn't oscillate. These little ones don't oscillate. Base is plastic, motor housing's plastic, the back of this is plastic. The larger ones, the back's usually metal, but the front of it is metal. I found this on top of a pile of junk in a hallway. There were a bunch of binders there, and then on top of the big pile of binders, empty binders, was this. And I took it. This does work. However, it needs a little bit of help. Observe. The motor is very, very tight. The bearings are totally dry. So, that's obviously why it was disposed of. Well, I'm gonna oil this thing. I figure with some oil, this thing should come back to life working perfectly, no problem. So let's do that. First I'll show you a sticker on the bottom here. Usually these don't have any identification on them. I'm not even sure. I believe the company that manufactured these was called the Super Electric Company, but I've never seen one of these that had the name Super Electric Company on the sticker. This one doesn't either. But it does have a model designation, model 6DT, 120 volts, 60 hertz, 0.27 amps, impedance protected, made in China. What kind of sucks about these is generally they're very hard to get into the motor housing. I've never successfully gotten into the motor housing in one of these. That's why I threw my fan that I had since new away when the thermal protection blew. You might think, well, why not just open it up and replace the thermal fuse? Well, I couldn't. I had no idea how to open the motor housing, but luckily for this one, I think it's going to be quite simple. There's one screw here and some plastic clips here, and I think this back panel will come right off. The larger models of these have a cylindrical shaded pole motor in them. I'm expecting a C-frame motor in this one, and if it is a C-frame, that'll be great because I'm very familiar with C-frame motors. I can completely disassemble one and reassemble it and clean everything up and get it working like it should. So let me open this up and then we'll come back. And there's inside, and yep, a C-frame motor. And actually, I don't think I'll even have to take out the motor. If I spin the fan blades here, see a little shaft right there, and I think right there, if I drop some oil down, that'll get it into the bearings. But the front bearing, will I be able to get to the front bearing? Maybe. So what I need to do is take this front grill off, remove the blades, and I might be able to get to the front bearing without having to remove and disassemble the motor. And take a look at this. This is very nice. This is the thermal protection. I think this is the thermal protection unit right here. The switch is right here. I'm not sure. I think this is the thermal protection unit. So even if that blew, I can easily replace that. Very nice. So let me take the front grill off and the blades off, and we'll see what we get. Yeah, no issue. There's the front bearings right there. Drip oil in there and the front bearings are oiled. And man, this thing is tight. And here's something interesting. I've been looking for a date of manufacture. I was hoping one would be stamped on the motor. If it is, it would be on the front and not the back, which is too bad because I don't feel like removing the motor. It's probably those two screws, but I don't feel like doing anything I don't have to. So we don't have a date of manufacture on the motor. But there is this thing right here. I don't know if it's a serial number or what. It says 200010302. I wonder if that's a date code of 2000. That would fit with this thing. This looks like something that would be from 2000. It's got the newish Super logo that started in the late 90s, early 2000s. So I've got 3-in-1 multi-purpose oil here. I'm gonna feed it some in the back and then feed it some in the front, and then we'll see how it runs afterwards. I don't like how the front grill comes off, by the way. Normally on these fans, how it comes off is there's 3 or 4 little clips that are hinged, and so you just turn them because they're on a hinge. You just turn them and the front grill comes off. Well, if this, where this is plastic and there's no hinges, you can see these little stoppers here keeping it from falling out. And basically there's one screw down here you remove, and you have to pry back the back plastic grill and pry it back where all these clips are so that the clips come out from around the front grill. I don't like that system. Alright, got everything oiled, and it's very nice now. Watch if I give the shaft a good spin. Spins for quite a while before it stops, and that's without even the blades on it. Very nice. This fan's gonna run really well when I'm done with it. I was quite liberal with the oil. Some of it's dripped down. That's good. Better to use too much. Ew. Too much than too little. A little bit of rust, I guess, there mixed with the oil. And of course I did the same for the front. So that's all that needs to be done here. The motor is very well loosened up now. I will put it back together and then we'll see how she runs. Alright, it's all oiled up and ready to go, and let's see how it runs. So I'm going to start it off on high speed here, see how it does. Oh, that's very nice. Beautiful. Runs perfectly. Fantastic. Unintended pun. Let's bring it down to a low speed. Nice and quiet. Runs like a sewing machine. That's awesome. Now most of these super fans rattle. It's just a consequence of their design. They'll make a rattling sound if the head's tilted downwards. I wonder if this will do that. Yes, it will. Basically, that's caused by the weight of the blades pulling the shaft outwards when it's tilted down, and that puts a physical stress on the bearings, and the bearings start rubbing around. Pretty much unavoidable, unfortunately. Although I wonder if perhaps that could be solved by using a thicker, heavier oil for the bearings. I don't know. But other than that, which is pretty much expected, this thing's working perfectly. Let me put it back on high speed, and we'll turn it off. See how the spin down time is. Well, that's pretty good for a tiny fan with plastic blades. That's pretty good spin down time. So yeah, I'm quite happy. This is a very cool fan, a very cool find, and it is now working practically like new. I'm really happy about that. I did some looking online. It turns out that Super had been making this fan since at least the mid-1980s, because someone on DT Vintage Fans, a fan enthusiast forum, posted a picture of one of these, same model and everything, one of these fans, but theirs had the older Super logo on it. See, this one's got the newer blue logo, theirs had the older gray logo, and they said it was from 1985. And I also found, by looking around, that the newer logo was apparently enacted in 1998, based on one piece of info I found. So it's not confirmed, but one piece of info I found said that 1998 was when they switched to the blue logo. So since this thing had that serial number on it that made it look like it was probably made in 2000, that's probably correct. But I'm quite surprised that it seems like, based on the info I found, that this fan was made from the mid-1980s, if not earlier, to the turn of the century, if not later, without ever having been changed. Aside from the logo change, it remained exactly the same. Same base, same style of the plastic base and everything. It was exactly the same. And I found that interesting because the larger super fans did change over time. You know, the super fans back in the 70s were your typical foreign-made desk fans that had really beautiful colors, you know, and translucent blue blades, or some of them were green or brown or red, and you know, that was the style of the 70s. And then in the 80s, the super fans had a base that had a bluish gray metal panel on it and bluish gray buttons, and that large fan I got 4 years ago, which you can watch a video on, that's what that one looks like. And that lasted until the late 80s, I think, and in the late 80s they switched to a plain white base with gray buttons, and then in 1998 they switched to the new logo, and the gray buttons were all one shade of gray rather than different shades of gray for each button. But this particular fan here never changed over its possible 15-year lifespan. So that's quite interesting. But anyway, I'm glad I found this fan and saved it from what would certainly have been an end for it. In fact, I'd say about half an hour after I picked this off the junk pile, someone came with a big trolley and picked up all the junk and carried it away, probably to a recycling bin or or dumpster or whatever. So that certainly would have spelled the end for this thing. So I'm glad I saved it. Was able to fix it, give it a new life. I'll be keeping it. I really like it. I like small 120 volt fans like this. And yeah, it's a keeper for sure. I haven't even had to clean it. It's not even dirty. It's almost perfectly clean. So there you go, folks. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you later.